share with you a simple yet life-changing phrase. A phrase that can sometimes reveal the past, often reveals the future, and usually illuminates the present. A phrase with its origins right here in Oak Park. Tom Dunnington, former Oak Park resident, now deceased, was frequently known to start conversations with this phrase: "What's it like to be you?" Then he listened and learned. I was inspired by this idea and decided to adopt it when I started meeting people for the first time. I'd like to share with you a few stories that will illustrate how this phrase changed my life. This is Abdul. I met him while sitting in front of the ice cream store in the town where I live. He was walking back and forth, and I thought he was flirting with me. Unfortunately, he wasn't. But he did sit down, and I quickly realized that English was not his native language. But I was already curious. What's it like to be him? I listened and I learned. I learned that Abdul is from Iraq. He served in their military for 17 years, achieving the rank of general. He partnered with the U.S. military to overthrow Saddam Hussein. He was permanently injured while doing that work, and because he and his family were repeatedly targeted by their neighbors, the U.S. moved them here. Abdul never planned to leave his home country. It was very difficult to say goodbye to his parents, his 12 brothers and sisters, and an even larger extended family that seemed to always be gathered around a table laden with his cooking. Once here, Abdul found himself in a totally new and different kind of world. He knew no one. At home, he was frequently seen as a traitor. Here, he was frequently seen as the enemy. I learned that Abdul is a good man. He's a husband and a father of 4, and he's a fabulous cook. Today, Abdul and his family are practicing their English, going to school, and working. Abdul recently became an American citizen, and he now calls the U.S. home. Abdul likes to say, "Now I thank my American friends by feeding them." This is Katy. We were introduced to each other earlier this year by a mutual friend. She moves in a world that's very different from mine. But when we sat down together, I was eager to ask, "What's it like to be you?" I listened and I learned. I learned that Katy was given up for adoption at 4 days old by a young mother who struggled with mental health issues. As a child, she never knew her biological father or her brothers. As a teenager, trying to find herself in this new, adopted white family, she also was confronted with mental health issues. She moved between a white world and a black one, never knowing exactly where she fit in. Today, Katy's greatest joy is her family. She's reconnected with her brothers. She has a strong marriage to a white man, and together, they're raising their 4 biracial daughters to believe that neither their gender nor the color of their skin will define who they are. Katy is a writer and blogs about health and wellness. She's working on her first book. She gives back to her local PTO and supports local social justice causes in her community. Katy says, "We're all whizzing through space on this tiny little rock. We might as well learn to get along because we're all we've got." Cabo is part of the boomerang generation, a part-time college student who lives with his grandma. I met him through her and immediately was curious. What's it like to be him? Over shared comfort food, he talked. I listened and I learned. I learned that he also works full-time in retail just to make ends meet while dreaming of a career as a graphic designer and entrepreneur. He likes anime, drawing dragons, movies, sleeping in and hanging out. Typical college student stuff. Then he shared with me that he struggled all of his life with both physical and mental challenges, and even now lives in chronic pain. At 7, he came out as a lesbian. By 9, he realized he was a boy trapped in a girl's body. He struggled to define himself in a world less than 15 years ago that didn't provide the vocabulary that he needed to so desperately express himself. His parents' marriage fell apart. His mother struggled to try to figure out how to make sense of this young boy who she had welcomed into the world as her daughter. Cabo attempted suicide for the first time and immediately found himself medicated and in therapy. By 20, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder 2, depressive, and chronic anxiety. He was sad all the time. Now, Cabo says, I don't want any more labels. I just want to be me. One more story. This is Vero, my brown-eyed daughter from a different mother. She came and lived with my daughter Kate and me as an exchange student. Her parents put her on a plane to travel to a different country to live with people that they had never met. I thought a lot about that and wondered what I would want if the situation were reversed. Meanwhile, I became an instant soccer mom as Vero hit the ground running by joining a traveling team. One day, as we traveled to a remote game site, I heard her say to me, "You sound just like my mom." In that moment, I realized that although her parents lived in a different country, spoke a different language, and whose day-to-day life was very different from mine, at the end of the day, we're all the same. Thank you for listening to my stories. It's allowed us to unpack our unconscious bias and learn a little bit of what it's like to really be somebody else. We've learned that we're all scared. We're all feeling lost and alone, not sure of who we are, where we're going. We're all a work in progress. We've also learned that we all have relationships that are really important to us. We all want to give back in meaningful ways by sharing our gifts and our talents with our community. We all dream of a better world. We've learned that if we stop and ask, what is it like to be you? And then listen, we realize at the end of the day, We're all the same. Now, are you ready to show up and do something different? If you are, I invite you right now to turn to the person next to you and ask, what's it like to be you? Thank you.